Good afternoon, everyone. We are ready to start our seventh Abhidhamma class in English in our second cycle. And as always, we have our esteemed teacher, Most Venerable Buluwala Rattanasiri Thero, to teach you about Abhidhamma all the way from Millava Dharma Vijayarama temple in Sri Lanka. So without much delay, I invite Most Venerable Buluwala Rattanasiri Thero to start the seventh Abhidhamma class. Over to you, Reverend Sir. Reverend Sir, you can unmute your microphone and start the video.
Good afternoon. Let's start our Abhidhamma class today. We were discussing about the ultimate truth reality, consciousness. We analyze the ultimate reality, consciousness, into 86 or 121. And by synthesizing into several categories, we discussed the functions of those consciousness. We understood these 89 or 121 consciousness travels in the world, in the universe, in different worlds, in human world, heavens, Brahmaloka. In that way, we studied the functions of those consciousness. And we studied consciousness, a special type of consciousness called supramundane consciousness that arise in the normal persons who has transcended this world. In that way, we discussed about consciousness. You know, ultimate reality, consciousness, is an invisible phenomenon. It's invisible phenomenon. But we discussed, as the Buddha analyzed or described through his supra, through his extrasensory perceptions, we discussed and we understood the functions of the consciousness. We understood in this ultimate reality, consciousness, it connects with morality and it connects with karma and vipaka also. We understood in karma, performing a karma, unwholesome or wholesome, there arise the consciousness, the relevant consciousness. And when the result comes, as karma vipaka, there again arises those consciousness. So we studied under ultimate reality, consciousness, about karma and how we developed our morality. That is the first step of T6R, morality. So this consciousness, the ultimate reality consciousness, connect with karma and vipaka, and also the morality. Today, we are going to discuss about the second ultimate reality, Ketasika, the mental factor. Mental factor is also functions as consciousness because Ketasika, they involve in consciousness. Ketasika generates within the consciousness. So, Ketasika as well as consciousness, they engage in morality and also karma and vipaka. Ketasika is also invisible phenomenon. Consciousness also an invisible phenomenon, and Chetasika is also invisible phenomenon. So it is very difficult to study about Chetasika and also the consciousness. But we'll try to study the functions of Chetasika in the role of morality and karma path. First, I would like to define what is Chetasika. Chetasika generates with its consciousness at the same time. When consciousness generates or arises, Chetasika also, the relevant Chetasika also arises at the same time. So when an object is there, then the consciousness generates associating that object. At the same time, this consciousness also generates. It is called Eka Upad. They generate within the same time. It passes away with the consciousness at the same time. You know, when consciousness arises, it does not remain forever. It passes away or it goes away. It arises and it disappears or passes away. In that way, when the consciousness passes away, that means when consciousness dies, Chetasika also dies. Cetasika passes away with the consciousness at the same time. Another thing is, Cetasika takes the object which is taken by the consciousness. Cetasika takes the object which is taken by the consciousness. You know, to arise the consciousness, there must be an object. Associating that object, consciousness arise. At the same time, associating that object, mental factor or the cetasika arises. And cetasika and consciousness are impossible to separate. They can't be separate. When consciousness arises, associating the object, and the cetasika arises, associating that the same object, but we can't separate. We can't separate consciousness and cetasika, the mental factor. For example, you know, when you cook a broth, you use spices, commodities. After cooking the broth, if you want to separate cardamom or pepper or any spice, cloves or anything, if you want to take those one of the spice separately from the broth, you can't do it. You take broth with a spoon. There are spices also there, but we can't separate. To make broth, we put spices, but after making or cooking the broth, we can't separate those spices from the broth. In that way, consciousness and cetasika are bound together, can't be separated. So that is the nature of conscious cetasika. Ekupada, ekavatuka. That means it takes the same object that takes the consciousness. When consciousness dies, cetasika also dies. Consciousness takes one object, then the cetasika can't get other objects. Cetasika must get the same object. So that is the nature of consciousness. Consciousness have been analyzed in 52. There are 52 mental factors in number. So that means cetasika has been analyzed into 52. And concerning some certain reasons, these 52 consciousness, mental factors have been synthesized into three groups. Anya Samana, Akusala, Sobana. Anya Samana, 13 in number. Akusala, 14 in number. Sobana, 25 in number. Variable mental factors. Anya Samana. Unwholesome mental factors. Akusala. Beautiful mental factors. Sobana. Those are the three categories of Chetasika. First, we'll take these variable mental factors, Anya Samana. These variable mental factors have been categorized or synthesized in two groups. Sabbatitta Sadharana Pakinnaka. Sabbatitta Sadharana, 7 in number. Pakinnaka, 6 in number. Sabbatitta Sadharana, universal. Pakinnaka, occasional. So universal 7 in number, occasional 6 in number. Universal Sabbatitta Sadharana, the 7 in number. We take those 7 first. We take those 7 first. What are those universal mental factors? They are known as Phassa, Vedana, Sanya, Chetana, Ekaggata, Jivita Indriya, Manasikara. Phassa, Vedana, Sanya, Chetana, Ekaggata, Jivita Indriya, Manasikara. Phassa, contact. Vedana, feelings. Sanya, perception. Chetana, volition. Ekaggata, one-pointedness. Jivitindriya, life faculty. Manasikara, attention. Those are the 7 universals. Why they are called universe? You studied Chetasika functions in the consciousness. So these 7 universal Chetasika mental factors, they involve in all consciousness. They involve in every consciousness. So there are 89 consciousness. So these 7 universal mental factors, they can engage in all consciousness, that is wholesome and unwholesome consciousness, and supramundane consciousness also. They can involve in all consciousness, so they are known as universals. Now we'll try to understand how they engage in the consciousness. Other consciousness, other Chetasika, they don't involve in all consciousness. They involve in consciousnesses separately. They have some certain consciousnesses to involve. But this universal conscious Chetasikas, they can involve in every consciousness. Now we'll take how these consciousnesses, how these Chetasikas involve in every consciousness. We'll take the one consciousness, unwholesome consciousness, rooted in greed. Can you remember the first consciousness rooted in greed? Somanassa sahagata, ditthigata sampayutta, asankarika. Somanassa sahagata, ditthigata sampayutta, asankarika. That is the consciousness rooted in greed. In Attasalini, the commentary describes when this unwholesome consciousness, somanassa sahagata, ditthigata sampayutta, asankarika. When this consciousness arises, associating the objects, they are first engage or arise this passa, the contact, the mental factor, passa. And there arise feelings and perceptions, volitions, one-pointedness, attention, and concentration. There may be arise those mental factors. Passa mental factor is there. It arises first because the contact, this mental factor, it contacts and begins the karma and vipaka, and also the other functions. Now, in Attasalini, there are this is to become contact person, there must be object, consciousness, and the doors of the faculty. When we suppose about I faculty, to arise the consciousness, there must be object and the sensitive part of the faculty. Then getting together all those three, object, consciousness, and doors of the faculty. Getting together of those three, that is called passive contact. Chakkuncha rupi viññānaṁ uppajjati. Tinnam sangati passu. Associating those, getting together those three, object and the doors of the faculty and the consciousness. It is called passive contact. Due to the passive contact, there arise feelings. There arise feeling, Vedana. Now, take the unwholesome consciousness rooted in greed, somanassa sahagata, ditthigata, sampayutta, asankara. Somanassa means that is joy, accompanied with joy. This joy is what? Joy is feeling. The mental factor, feeling, the somanassa. So somanassa is feeling there. That is a mental factor. And you know there are other feelings, upekka sahagata, equanimity. That's also feeling. Upekka sahagata is also feeling. And you study domanassa sahagata, patiga sampayutta, asankarika chitta. Domanassa is displeasure. Domanassa. So displeasure is a feeling. So in this consciousnesses, we can see those mental factors. Contact is there. Contact is there and feeling is there. Somanassa, domanassa, and upekka sahagata. So we can see the varieties of consciousness becomes because of engaging the mental factors there. Varieties of different functions of consciousnesses we can see because of this involvement of mental factors. So mental factors that does some task in the consciousness. So feeling is there in those consciousnesses. And also there arises perceptions also, sanya, how to understand, how to recognize the feeling, that is perceptions. Perceptions recognize what kind of feeling there. So the functions of perception is to recognize or understand the vedana or the feeling. Then volition, chetana. Chetana, that mental factor, connect with kamma. Chetanaham bhikkhave kammam vadāmi. Chetitva kammam karoti kayena vācāya manasa. So this mental factor, volition, chetana, that connect with kamma. Kamma is volitional actions. When we do an action with volition, it becomes kamma. Without the mental factor volition, if we engage any task, it is not a kamma. So volition, chetana, it connect with kamma. Then one-pointedness, ekaggata. Ekaggata. Can you remember where can you find this mental factor, ekaggata? We studied fine material consciousness. There are 15 in number, fine material consciousness, kusala, vipaka, kriya, wholesome, resultant, and functional. They are in five, the same consciousness. What are the vitakka, vitara, piti, sukha, ekaggata. Now ekaggata is there. That is the mental factor. So in fine material consciousness, this ekaggata is there. But this mental factor ekaggata, it can involve in all consciousness. When we consider about the fine material consciousness, wholesome fine material consciousness, when the person engaged in meditation in anapanasati or kasina bhavana, the mental factor functions there to concentrate the mind. That is ekaggata. Concentrate the mind of the meditator. That is the functions of ekaggata. But this ekaggata, the one-pointedness, it can be engaged in unwholesome activity also. Now suppose person is going to kill an animal. Suppose he is a hunter. So he has to make plans. He has to think of over the killing animals. He has to think of the places where the animal associates, where the animal are there, and that way he has to think of that subject matter. And when he goes to hunt animals, he has to keep alert, his attention, to keep attention. There must be this, there must be that mental factor, ekagata. If there is no that mental factor in that unwholesome consciousness, he can't perform that unwholesome activity. He can't shoot the animal because without ekagata. If there is ekagata, one-pointedness, he can shoot animals by taking the correct aim. So in ekagata, this one-pointedness, this mental factor engage in all consciousness, wholesome and unwholesome. When it involves in wholesome consciousness, his task is wholesome. When it involves in wholesome consciousness, his task is wholesome. That is the nature of those universal mental factors. Then the life faculty, Jivita Indriya. What is the function of this mental factor? This mental factor, Jivita Indriya, it provides energy to consciousness to survive for some time. Consciousness arises and remain for some time and dies. To stay for some time, Jivita Indriya, it gives energy for life. Like food gives energy to the being to live, to survive his life. In that way, Jivita Indriya provide energy, life to survive the consciousness. You know, consciousness, consciousness goes from one birth to another, next birth. When the person dies, the last connection of the stream of consciousness is called Tuti Chitta, then when the person dies and his stream of consciousness does not die. This life faculty, Jivita Indriya, it gives some energy to survive. So when the person dies, the stream of consciousness survive for some time before to begin the Patisandhicitta. Between these two links, the stream of consciousness must be survived, must live. And that life gives Jivita Indriya. So the functions of Jivita Indriya, it gives energy to survive the consciousness. The consciousness dies when the Arahant dies. If not, the consciousness dies. When the person, the normal person, ordinary person dies, his stream of consciousness does not die. It survives because of this life faculty. But surviving the scenes is not Atman or permanent things that is ever changing. To survive by ever changing, Jivita Indriya that gives life or energy to the consciousness. That is the function of the conscious life faculty or Jivita Indriya. Then Manasikara, attentions, that is Manasikara, attention. When we practice meditation, we need this attention, Manasikara. Or in our day-to-day life, we want these Manasikara, attentions. So we must work with Yoniso Manasikara. Yoniso Manasikara. So this Manasikara, the mental factor, it can engage in unwholesome activities as well as wholesome activities. When the person does unwholesome activity, he needs Manasikara. Without attention, he can't perform that unwholesome activity. For instance, stealing a good without keen attention about the environment, about the conditions of the place, the robber can't steal the good. So Manasikara must be there to perform that task. So when we engage in wholesome activity, when we engage in a wholesome activity also, we can develop Manasikara, attention, then we can do that wholesome task well. So Manasikara, attention is must be there to uh, do any function or task. Studying the students, for the students, they need this attention. They must keep their attention on the subject matter. They must keep their attention when they study. If it is a difficult subject matter, by keeping attention, he can study very well. So those are the functions of mental factors, the universal. When wholesome consciousness or unwholesome consciousness, if there arise wholesome consciousness or unwholesome consciousness, there arise a lot of mental factors beyond these universal mental factors. There may be arise other mental factors also. I can say you when we developed our meditation, there is concentration. We have to develop our concentration, samadhi. Samadhi, it has two varieties, Mithya Samadhi and Samma Samadhi. Mithya Samadhi, Samma Samadhi. So this Mithya Samadhi and Samma Samadhi is arised due to the functions of this mental factors. When the person engaged in a wholesome activity, suppose he developed meditation. When he developed meditation, it contacts happen and feelings arise, the perceptions, volition, chetana, and one-pointedness, and that way those mental factors arise there. Then samadhi also, the mental factor as a mental factor arise there. Because of that, he concentrate his mind. That is called samma samadhi, because this mental factor engaged in the wholesome activity. It is called samma samadhi. When the person engaged in unwholesome activity, he has to concentrate his mind. Suppose now a soldier, he is in a war front. He is waiting for his enemies. So he has to keep his attention, manasikara there. And also, he has to concentrate his mind. If not, he can't do it. So in that, it is an unwholesome activity. So he concentrate his mind. That concentration is known as Metta Samadhi. So Samadhi and Metta Samadhi is there due to the functions of these mental factors. In that way, we can understand the functions of these mental factors. They are called universal mental factors. Then we'll come to the other mental factors. They are known as occasional. Pakinnaka. They are 6 in number. Vitakka, Vitara, Adhimokka, Viriya, Piti, Tanna. Vitakka, Vitara, Adhimokka, Viriya, Piti, Tanna. Vitakka, initial application. Vitara, sustained application. Adhimokka, decision. Viriya, energy. Piti, set, practice. Tanda, desire to act. Desire to act. Those are known as occasional mental factors. Because these mental factors, they can't engage in every consciousness, like Sabbachitta Sadhana, universe. Universal seven, they engage in every, they can engage in every consciousness. But this occasional, they can't engage in every consciousness, but they can engage in wholesome consciousness and also in unwholesome consciousness. That's why they are called occasional mental factors. Altogether, 7 and 6, 13 are known as Anyasama, variable. Why they are called variable? Now this 7 consciousness, when they engage in wholesome consciousness, sometimes this occasional consciousness also can engage in that wholesome consciousness. When it is unwholesome consciousness, they also, the occasional variable consciousness also, they can engage. So in that sense, they are equal. That's why they are called Anyasamana variable consciousness, variable mental factors. Now these occasional variable mental factors, First one, vitakka. Vitakka, what is vitakka here? Initial application. What is the function of vitakka? The function of vitakka is getting the consciousness on the object. Getting on the object. That enforce the consciousness to get on the object. That is the initial task when the person engage in meditation, in kasina bhavana. When person practice the kasina bhavana, he has to get on his consciousness on that object, avoiding other objects in the environment. Avoiding all the objects, he must get on his consciousness on the selected object, kasina. So that task does this mental factor, vitakka, it enforces consciousness to get on the object. In other words, I can say vitakka that accept the object, accept the object for the consciousness. That is vitakka. And second one, vichara. Vitakka and vichara, they go together. Vitakka, vichara. Vitakka and vichara. Vichara is sustained applications, means vichara that think over the object, investigate, associate the object. That is the functions of vichara. I can say you example for vitakka and vichara. You know, when we went to school, we used mathematical instrument box for our mathematics. There is an instrument called compass to draw circle. This compass has two arms. One arm is a pointed one. The other arm where we fix the pencil or pen to draw the circle. When you draw a circle by using this compass, you fix your one arm of the compass in the center of the circle. And you take the distance according to the radians of the circle from your other arm, and you draw the circle. You draw the circle, moving the arm with the pencil around the center. Now, the arms that fix on the center, it moves within the center. The arm that has a pencil, it moves at the distance of the radiance of the circle and complete the circle. So the arms that fixes in the center is just like vitakka. It fixes the arm and it moves within center. And vichara, it goes some certain distance and covers some area, investigate, like completing the circle. That is vichara. So vichara is that vichara investigate the object. Then adhimukha. Adhimukha, the functions of adhimukha that take decisions about the object or any subject matter. To take decision, there must be adhimukha. Then energy, virya. So the functions of the consciousness to do the task of the consciousness, there must be energy. Without energy, the consciousness can't do its task. So this virya mental factor that provides energy to the consciousness. Now, tina mid, slender and torpor. If there is tina mid, then virya or the energy that provides energy to that consciousness to engage in meditation or any meritorious deeds. That is energy, virya, mental factor. Then set piti. Now you can remember, where can we find this mental factor, piti? You know, find material consciousness. Can you remember now? Vitakka, vichara, piti. Piti is there. Piti, the mental factor, that it is happiness. After initial application of the object, the person concentrate, develop his concentrate up to some extent. Then after sustained applications, he further developed his concentrations. Because of that, there arise piti, set, happiness, factor. That is the mental factor. In the third absorption, first one is vitakka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekaggata. The second one is vichara, piti, sukha, ekaggata. Third one is piti, sukha, ekaggata. When the person comes into the third absorptions, there is only piti without vitakka and vichara. Vitakka and vichara, without vitakka and vichara, there is piti and sukha ekaggata. Piti is there, that is the mental factor. Then thanda. Thanda is desire to act. That is, consciousness need a desire to act, to survive, to function. So that energy provides thanda, desire. If there is no desire to do anything. We can't do. If you don't have desire to study, you can't study. If you don't have desire to listen to the sermons or the lessons, you can't do it. So that energy provides Kanda, the mental factor. The mental factor Kanda is there. If there is the mental factor Kanda, desire to act, the person continue his task happily. That is the function of Kanda, desire to act. So I have explained 13 mental factors. I think the time is up now. Thank you very much for listening to me. Blessing of the triple gems be showered upon you.
Much merit to you, Reverend Sir. If our dear Dhamma listeners have any questions, you are most welcome to unmute your microphone and ask your question. I'll just search through if we have any questions submitted to us through Google Forms. There is a submission from a couple of our listeners, but the question is not phrased as a question, so I'm not sure, but they're asking, they've listed the term mental satisfaction. So I'm not sure if they're asking to define the term or whether it is connected to Abhidhamma. Is there anything called mental satisfaction? Or a way to gain mental satisfaction? I'm not very sure about that question. So many of
the question is not clear.
It is not. It's just
not
a
a
term.
question.
Yes. So we will pass it up. So if the person who sent the question can clarify it, we will most certainly answer your question. If our listeners have any questions, this is, you may ask. I'll just check on the YouTube channel to see if there are any questions by our listeners over there. So today we were introduced to the theme on mental factors or Chetasika, which can only arise along with Chitta or consciousnesses. So thank you very much, Reverend Sir, for explaining what Chetasika means and the different types of Chetasika. We will most certainly continue on this theme in our next class as well. So if there are no questions, we will wrap up our session. Our next session is next week, Saturday, same time. So I hope we will see our Dhamma listeners again. And in the meantime, if you do have any questions, please feel free to send in your questions or anything that you want to get clarified. So until then, much merit to all our Dhamma listeners and much merit to you, Most Venerable Bulwala Ratanasiri Thero. I will wrap up the session now.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm ending the session now, Reverend Sir.
Okay, now we will wind up the lesson.
Oh, there is one question I just didn't see. Can we get Abhidhamma commentary book in PDF? There is the compendium for the Abhidhamma commentary by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and it is freely available online. If you search for it, the PDF is available online. I'm not sure if it is, that is the one which we shared some time back as well. Shall I just post the link on chat for that? Let me just quickly search it up. If you Google Abhidhamma Bhikkhu Bodhi, the title is
Manual.
yes, Manual of
Manual
Abhidhamma.
of
Yes,
Abhidhamma.
Manual of Abhidhamma, and it is so I have it by Buddhist Publication Society in Sri Lanka. I'm just posting the link on chat. So before I end the session, so I just posted the PDF on a comprehensive manual of Dhamma by Bhikkhu Bodhi. You can just click on it and save it or bookmark it on your browser. So when I close Zoom, the link will disappear. So I'll give maybe 10 seconds for you to click on it. All right, so I hope you received it. I am ending the session now, Reverend Sir.
Okay.